We are following breaking news right now. North Korea has test-fired a missile from a region north of Pyongyang, according to the South Korean military. We don't have any other details yet on the type of missile or its path. There was a statement by the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying they are analyzing the type and flight distance of the projectile, but that's all that they have right now. Gordon Chang joins me now by phone from New York City. He is the author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Gordon, what more can you tell us?
We know that the missile went about 25 miles or so and then exploded, and that's about it. But really, the important story here is not how successful the test was, but what this says about the mentality of the North Korean regime. That despite all the pressure that China and the United States have put on Pyongyang, they still went ahead with the ballistic missile test. And that indicates that the North Korean regime right now is going to strike out. So we've got to be very concerned about how all of this starts to play out, not only in Pyongyang, but also in Washington and Beijing.
Well, the U.S. has said that they have not taken military action off the table, and that has caused quite a bit of consternation with China and Russia, both basically rebuffing those kinds of statements. And even at the UN, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has urged international response and warned of catastrophic consequences if their ballistic missile testing systems, if their program isn't lessened. So we have one side saying we've got to get to the negotiation table, and the other side evidently coming from the White House now saying, but military action is still an option. I mean, it's mixed signals, is it not?
Well, certainly. And in a crisis like this, would be very hard to impose message discipline, especially on an administration which just came into power. Right now, I don't think the United States clearly knows what it's going to do and hasn't gamed out all of how all this is going to work out. And especially now that the North Koreans have a vote and they've decided to roil the situation, I think it's going to be, they're going to make it up as they go along in Washington. And that's also true for Beijing. Even though they've thought about this issue probably far longer than we have, I don't think that they right now have a good handle on how all of this is going to play out.
Yeah, they've said as much. We have word that the Yonhap news agency out of South Korea says that the missile blew up in a matter of seconds. They're counting this as another failure among many failures of North Korea's missile program, and having them blow up sometimes even just on the launch pad or just a few seconds into flight. But as you said earlier, that's not necessarily a good thing, especially right now with the tensions rising.
Yes, well, you know, this is a question not of their capabilities, because we know that they will eventually succeed. But we do know that they are taking and lashing out at both Beijing and Washington. So at this particular time, you know, we've got to be concerned about the mentality of Kim Jong-un and the people around him.
They've held recent military exercises, even firing barrages of artillery into the sea. Kim Jong-un was actually on the podium applauding it with a bunch of his generals, apparently just gleeful at this show of might. So you're right. He is not in any way lessening the tensions. They've held some very militaristic parades, a lot of saber rattling, and even though this was a failed test, as you said, it shows that, you know, the Washington's approach at trying to say behave yourself is not being received very well over there.
No, it's not, and we can expect the North Koreans to be defiant. I mean, that is the nature of this regime, and especially at a time when the international community is uniting against them. We can expect that they will do things that'll surprise us, and none of those things are going to be very good. Yeah,
and unfortunately, one of the really concerning statements came out of Pyongyang recently that said war is imminent. There are reports that there was a statement out of Pyongyang. Now, they're bellicose, they're belligerent, especially their great leader, so there's no way of knowing whether that was actually a literal warning or whether that was just hyperbole. But given that they're still trying to perfect their ballistic missile program, and they're also willing to show the world that they have a very large military, supposedly a 1 million-man military with considerable armament pointed south, not at the U.S., which is, you know, the main concern around here, but they have artillery and missiles pointed south towards South Korea, where there are hundreds of thousands of people in the way of danger, in addition to around 29,000 American soldiers.
Yes, well, war on the Korean Peninsula would be horrific because you have the North Koreans are forward deployed on the demilitarized zone. Seoul, a metropolitan area of 25 million, is about 30 miles from the DMZ. And, of course, the North Koreans not only have nukes, but they've also got high explosive artillery, and they've got chemical agents and biological weapons. So war on the Korean Peninsula would result in hundreds of thousands of casualties in the first hours.
It would be almost world-changing in ways because no one would win a war like that. Am I correct? You would have, I mean, North Korea cannot stand up against the U.S. There's no way. But they could cause such devastation, so much death, and the refugee crisis that would unleash would be mind-boggling.
Well, yes, and you know, the U.S. military has gamed out war on the Korean Peninsula, and every time they have done it, somebody has used a nuclear weapon. So we know that this is a crisis that could easily escalate because there are 4 nuclear weapon states involved: China, Russia, North Korea, and the United States. Right.
Disconcerting. Gordon Chang, thank you so much. We appreciate your input in this.